The air in the flagship store was sterile and smelled of money a crisp. Floral scent pumped through hidden vents. Mengen stared at the bottle of revitalizing celestial essence, a teardrop of gilded glass promising eternal youth for the price of her entire month's rent. As a makeup artist, she knew the game. 90% of the cost was marketing. 10% was hope. It utilizes a proprietary blend of deep-sea algae and fermented stardust. A voice purred beside her. Su Xingyao, the company's marketing director, stood with an air of effortless ownership, a smile as polished as the marble floor. But the samples are reserved for our VIP clients. The implication hung in the air, sharp and clear. You are not one of them. Mengen felt a familiar heat creep up her neck, but kept her expression neutral. Stardust, that's impressive. Her skepticism was quiet, a private rebellion. Before Su Xingyao could deliver another thinly veiled insult, a low voice cut through the tension. Give her one. Shen Yi, CEO of the conglomerate that owned this brand, had materialized behind them. He wasn't looking at his ex-girlfriend, Su Xingyao. His gaze was fixed on Mengan, a flicker of something unreadable in his dark eyes. He wore a simple black turtleneck and trousers, yet he commanded the space more than all the glittering displays combined. Su Xingyao's smile faltered. Yi, I was just explaining our policy. And I'm changing it, he said, his tone flat, leaving no room for argument. He held Meng An's gaze for a second longer, a silent transaction passing between them before he turned and walked away. A sales associate, flustered, quickly packaged a vial of the celestial essence and handed it to a stunned Meng An. The memory of his cool, decisive intervention made the company team dinner that evening feel even more surreal. Meng An sat at the edge of a large, circular table in a raucous private room, a quiet island in a sea of forced laughter and aggressive networking. She was a recent hire in the creative department, an outsider invited out of obligation. Meng An, you're so quiet, a senior manager slurred, leaning across the table. Don't you have a boyfriend to liven you up? A few colleagues snickered. Before she could formulate a polite, evasive answer, the chair opposite her was pulled out. Shen Yu sat down, the nosy chatter immediately dimming to a respectful murmur. The air shifted, charged with his presence. He picked up his teacup, his eyes scanning the faces at the table before landing on hers. Leave her be, he announced to the room, his voice combat absolute. She's my girl. A collective gasp, followed by an awkward silence. Meng An's heart hammered against her ribs. He had to be joking, a bizarre, executive-level attempt at humor to deflect the attention. Yet, the way he said it, with a stony lack of inflection, made it feel less like a joke and more like a decree. He caught her wide-eyed stare and gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head, a silent command to play along. The reprieve was short-lived. When the ordering began, the senior manager who had teased her took charge, a malicious glint in her eye. Let's get the spicy crawfish, a double order, and the peanut-crusted sea bass. Oh, and the tempura platter extra shrimp. Meng An's polite smile tightened. She was severely allergic to shellfish, spicy food, and peanuts. They all knew. It had come up during their team-building lunch just last week. One by one, plates of fragrant, steaming food she couldn't touch began to fill the lazy Susan. The vibrant reds of chili oil and glistening shells of prawns became a fortress, walling her off completely. She felt the familiar, cold sense of isolation wash over her as she watched her colleagues laugh and dig in, pointedly spinning the dishes she couldn't eat away from her. Shen Yi observed her from across the table. He saw her stiff posture, her untouched plate, her forced smile, but he interpreted it all through the lens of his own world. She's uncomfortable, he thought. Intimidated, maybe she's worried about the cost. He saw a damsel in distress, not a woman enduring a calculated social assault. Determined to save her, he flagged down a waiter. Just a bowl of steamed rice for her. Please, he said, his voice carrying across the table, and a glass of hot water with lemon. The table fell silent. This was worse. Far worse. The colleagues' pitying glances were more scalding than their earlier mockery. He hadn't rescued her. He had just painted her as a charity case, too poor and provincial to participate. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on her chest. Yet, she met his gaze and nodded, a small, grateful dip of her head that cost her every ounce of her pride. The invitation from Su Xingyao had felt like an olive branch. It's a retro-themed cocktail party for our top clients, she had explained over the phone, her voice smooth as cream. I have the perfect vintage dress for you. It will make a statement. The statement Mengan made upon entering the Grand Heights ballroom was not the one she had envisioned. The theme was not retro. It was modern minimalism. The cavernous room was a sea of sleek, monochrome silk and razor-sharp tailoring, and she, in a powder blue taffeta dress with puff sleeves and a flared skirt, was a relic from a forgotten era. The polite murmurs of conversation didn't just quiet, they seemed to curdle in the air around her. Every glance felt like a physical jab, a mix of pity and derision. Heat crawled up her neck, a suffocating blush that matched the shame pooling in her stomach. Su Xingyao, standing near the bar in a liquid silver gown, offered a tiny, apologetic shrug from across the room, an expression of pure, calculated victory. Just as Mengan was about to turn and flee, a firm hand settled on the small of her back. She flinched, but the touch was instantly familiar. A warm anchor in the icy waters of her humiliation. Shen Yi stood beside her, his presence a shield. He hadn't looked at her dress, only at her face, reading the panic in her wide eyes. He turned them both to face the room, his jaw set, his voice, though calm, cut through the ambient noise with effortless authority. Good evening, everyone. To those I haven't had the pleasure of introducing, I'd like you to meet Mengan. He paused, his grip on her tightening ever so slightly. My girlfriend. The word hung in the air, a definitive, non-negotiable fact. Whispers shifted from mockery to speculation. The declaration was a double-edged sword. It saved her from immediate disgrace, but also chained her more tightly to a world where she felt she didn't belong. Determined not to be seen as just his damsel in distress, Mengan took a deep breath. She spotted Mr. Li, the elderly chairman of a renowned cosmetics manufacturer, and saw her chance. Excusing herself, she approached him, forcing a professional smile. She didn't talk about Shen Yi or the company. She talked about her passion. She spoke of the challenges in stabilizing organic pigments in long-wear formulas. Her voice gaining confidence, she lost herself in the subject she loved. Mr. Li, initially dismissive, found himself leaning in, genuinely intrigued by her depth of knowledge. From her vantage point, Su Xingyao watched the scene unfold. Her plan to expose Mengan as a cheap, classless accessory had backfired. Shen Yi's public defense and Mengan's own unexpected resilience had only made them appear stronger. The jealousy that simmered beneath her polished exterior began to boil, solidifying into a colder, more resolute plan. If social humiliation wouldn't work, she would have to sever the root. The fragile confidence Mengan had salvaged from the evening shattered the following day. The air in Shen Yi's office was heavy with unspoken tension. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, his silhouette rigid against the sprawling cityscape. He looked exhausted, the weight of his company and their complicated relationship etched into the lines around his eyes. Anan, he began, his voice low and strained. There's a lot going on right now. With the board, with the new product launch, with us. He finally turned to face her, his expression pained. I need a few days to just calm down, to sort things out. The words were a physical blow, Sort things out. Was she something to be sorted, a problem to be solved? The humiliation from the party flooded back, now laced with a new, terrifying insecurity. She nodded numbly, unable to form a coherent response, and retreated from his office feeling more alone than ever. It was in this vulnerable state that Su Xingya found her. She cornered Mengan in the building's quiet lobby, her demeanor one of profound, sisterly concern. "I saw how he was with you." Xingya started, her voice a sympathetic murmur. "He's under incredible pressure. He would never tell you this, but LS Cosmetics is in trouble." She detailed the company's precarious financial state, the failed European expansion that cost millions, the private loans Shen Yi had taken out, using his own assets as collateral to keep the company afloat during its last crisis. "He built this company from nothing, Mengan. He sacrificed everything, including his relationship with me, because he believed business and personal feelings were a weakness he couldn't afford. And now," Xingyao's eyes filled with a carefully crafted sorrow, "now, his association with you, an unknown makeup artist, is making the investors nervous. The scandal with your sister, the party last night, it's all seen as a liability, a distraction he can't afford." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart, piercing Mengan's already wounded self-worth. She wasn't his partner. She was his liability, his burden. The stress that had been a low hum in the back of her mind began to scream. Her alternate persona, the one born of anxiety and a desperate need for control, felt closer than ever. Su Xingyao's words fed the darkest voice inside her, the one that whispered she was a destructive force in the lives of those she cared about. She was dragging Shen Yi down, undoing all his years of sacrifice with her very presence. That night, in the crushing silence of her small apartment, the decision crystallized. It wasn't a choice made of anger or spite, but of a profound, distorted sense of love. To save him, she had to erase herself from his life. She met him at the waterfront, the place where they shared their first real, unguarded conversation. The city lights glittered across the dark river, a cruel mirror of the sparkle that had died in her eyes. "Shen Yi," she said, her voice brittle, "we need to stop seeing each other." He searched her face, confusion warring with a dawning hurt. "What, after last night? Anan, I was protecting you. I don't need your protection." She lied, the words tasting like ash. She recited the lines she had practiced, the ones that echoed Su Xingyao's poison. "I'm a burden to you, to your company. I'm holding you back." Seeing the dark circles under her eyes and the tremor in her hands, Shen Yi's mind went not to corporate intrigue, but to her health. He remembered the doctor's warnings about her stress disorder, how severe pressure could trigger a dissociative state. He believed their tumultuous relationship, the public scrutiny, was the source of her pain. He thought she was breaking under the weight of being with him. His heart broke. To fight for her now, to argue, would only increase her stress. He believed the most loving thing he could do was to let her go, to give her the peace she was so desperately seeking. He nodded slowly, a single, devastating motion. The pain in his eyes was a perfect reflection of her own. "If this is what you need," he said, his voice thick with emotions he couldn't show, "to get better, then okay." The glass doors of LS Cosmetics slid open, not with a whisper, but with the force of a coming storm. Mengan stood in the lobby, her place where she had once felt small and invisible. Today, she commanded it. Calm was the hesitant artist in soft knits. In her place was a woman in a razor-sharp pantsuit, her hair pulled back into a severe chignon, her lipstick a slash of defiant crimson. The timid uncertainty in her eyes had been replaced by focused, almost unnerving clarity. This was not the Mengan anyone knew. This was a persona born from unbearable stress, a shell of polished steel forged in the fire of humiliation. From this moment on, she announced to the stunned receptionist, her voice echoing in the marble-clad space. "I'm President Meng. Summon the product development team." Now, whispers followed her like a ripple in water as she strode toward the executive floor, her heels clicking a resolute rhythm against the floor. Shen Yi, alerted by a frantic call from his assistant, found her already seated at the head of the boardroom table, a dozen bewildered executives staring at her as if she were an apparition. "Our current line is a lie," she began, her gaze sweeping over them, cold and analytical. She tapped a projection of their best-selling foundation. "We sell cover-ups. We promise perfection by hiding flaws. It's a philosophy of shame. The future of LS is not in hiding reality, but in healing it." A senior manager cleared his throat. "With all due respect, our market research indicates." "Your market research is obsolete," Mengen cut in, her tone leaving no room for argument. "It measures yesterday's insecurities. I'm interested in tomorrow's confidence. We will pivot. We will develop a line centered on cellular repair, beauty that is skin deep. Because it starts deep in the skin." Shen Yi stood at the doorway, a maelstrom of confusion, fear, and the strange, undeniable admiration swirling within him. He saw the flicker of her stress-induced state, the rigid posture, the unnaturally steady voice, but he also heard a brilliance he always knew she possessed, now unleashed without the filter of self-doubt. It was terrifying, her magnificent. Before he could intervene, the door opened and Su Xingyao entered, a smug smile on her face. "What is the meaning of this circus? Shen Yi, are you just going to let her?" Meng An's head swiveled, eyes locking on to her rival with chilling precision. "Vice President Su," she said, a voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. "Your tenure at this company is predicated on a fundamental misunderstanding of our mission. You sell products. I build a philosophy. Your consistent insubordination and attempts to sabotage our projects have been noted. You're fired. Security will escort you out." Su Xingyao's face went from disbelief to purple fury. "You can't do this, Shen Yi." Shen Yi met her desperate gaze, then looked at Meng An, who sat there with the unshakable conviction of a zealot. He saw the truth in her accusation and the poison in his ex-girlfriend's ambition. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod to his assistant, who immediately summoned security. It was a leap of faith, a terrifying bet on the fractured, brilliant woman before him. For now, he would be her shield. 2 days later, President Meng stood at a podium, facing a sea of cameras at a hastily arranged press conference. Her confidence was blinding. She had galvanized the company, her radical vision inspiring a terrified but energized team. "Today, LS Cosmetics redefines the concept of flawless beauty," she declared. "We are proud to announce our flagship product, Rebirth, a serum formulated with a revolutionary serum protein repair essence, capable of regenerating damaged skin tissue." A reporter raised his hand. "An impressive claim. Is the core technology patented?" Meng An's smile didn't waver. "The patent is pending." It was the only crack in her armor, but it was enough to shatter the illusion. The words hung in the air, thick with skepticism. "Pending." The media's polite interest curdled into suspicion. Buy of the day. The news cycle was brutal. LS was a company built on an unproven, unprotected claim. The stock began to bleed. Investors, smelling instability, started pulling out, their calls flooding the finance department. The empire Shen Yi had painstakingly built began to crumble. The final blow came not as a market report, as a phone call. Shen Yi answered, his stomach twisting into a cold knot. "I just wanted to call and congratulate you." Su Xingyao's voice dripped with saccharine venom. "Your new president is certainly bold, so bold. She announced a product without securing the patent. Luckily for me, I have a better relationship with that little French lab than she does." The patent for that revolutionary essence. It's mine now. Good luck. The line went dead. The betrayal was absolute. A calculated checkmate. LS was not only in financial crisis. It was creatively bankrupt. Its promised future stolen. There was only one option left, an option he had sworn he would never take. The drive to his father's mansion felt like a journey into his own past failures. Shen Kainchen sat in his cavernous study, surrounded by relics of old money and older power, his face an unreadable mask of disappointment. Shen Yi didn't waste time with peasantries. He laid out the situation. The capital shortage, the stolen patent, the desperate need for a bridge loan. His father listened without expression, steepling his fingers. So, the company you built to prove you were nothing like me is on the verge of collapse, he said, his voice as cold as the marble fireplace. And because of a girl who has clearly lost her mind. I remember your last catastrophic error in judgment. It also involved a woman. The old wound, raw and deep, was torn open again. I will give you the money. Shen Kainchen continued, his eyes like chips of ice. On one condition, you will cede a controlling interest to me, and you will remove that woman from any position of power. It is time you learn that sentiment has no place in business. Shen Yi walked out into the cold night air, his father's offer feeling more like a condemnation than a rescue. The weight of it all pressed down on him, the imminent ruin of his company, his father's crushing disapproval, and the gut-wrenching realization that in trying to support Meng An, he may have enabled her to destroy them both. He was standing on the edge of an abyss, and the person he loved most had just pushed them over. The only light in Meng An's apartment came from the unforgiving white ring of her phone stand. It carved her out of the shadows, turning her small living room into a stage. Her hands trembled as she pressed record. For a moment, she just stared into the tiny lens, the silence buzzing with the millions of unspoken judgments she'd internalized over a lifetime. Then, she took a breath and swept her hair back from her face. With a slow, deliberate motion, she tilted her head, revealing the secret she'd guarded since childhood. Her jagged, silvery scar that cut from her temple down to her cheekbone. It puckered the skin, a permanent testament to a forgotten fall and a lifetime of self-consciousness. Hello, everyone. Her voice was a fragile whisper. My name is Meng An, and this is also me. Her gaze didn't waver. For years, I hid this. Not because I was ashamed of the scar, but because I was afraid of the pity. I was afraid you would see my story before you saw me. She picked up the bottle of a LS liquid foundation, the product at the center of the corporate storm. We're told that makeup is for covering things up, for hiding flaws. But what if that's wrong? She pumped a small amount onto her fingers and began to apply it. Not over the scar, but around it. Her application was gentle, artful. She wasn't erasing her history. She was framing it. What if it's a tool for choosing, for deciding what part of your story you want to tell today? This foundation doesn't hide my scar. It highlights the rest of my skin. It tells the world that my scar is a part of me, not all of me. It's not about creating a mask. It's about building a frame for the real masterpiece you. She finished, her face luminous, the scar now a deliberate, undeniable part of her beauty. Your imperfections don't diminish you, she concluded, her voice finding its strength. They are your signature. Don't hide them. Own them. She ended the recording. The silence that followed was heavier than before. The video didn't just make a splash. It was a tsunami. Within hours, it was everywhere. The hashtag #FrameYourFlaws trended globally. On screen after screen, Meng An's quiet courage was reflected in a torrent of comments. I have a port wine stain I've hidden my whole life. Not anymore.